Hi, everyone. It is December the 4th. It's been a quick semester. This is our last kind of regular class meeting. Next week, we're going to take the exam, and then after the exam, we'll have the presentations. So I've got all of the homework graded that's been submitted. If you think if you think you're missing points for something, you need to contact me. A couple of the ones that had the group on them, some people I didn't have information for. So there's no grades. And if you think that you were part of a team and should have been given a grade for something, you need to let me know which team that you were part of, who else was on that team, and then get back to me on that. Because we switched a little bit of the team members around. So make sure that you don't miss points for something there. So if you think that you're missing points, if you didn't do the homework and you still want to do that, I will give you till next class period. And I might not knock off a few points for being late, but it's better than zero. So I encourage you, if you haven't turned in some homework and you would like to do that, you need to do that by the class period next week. I'll even give you till midnight next week because I won't be able to do much with it till after the class, and then I can start compiling all the grades. So as I said, next week will be our last class. We're going to do two things, a final exam and then some presentations. So make sure you have those turned in. Somebody should be prepared to share their screen at that point and lead the presentation. Hopefully all the team members can participate, and that we'll have here's some interesting takes on one of those cases that you've chosen. So are there any questions about that so far? The study guide is posted. It's been there since last week. So if you have questions on that, you can reach out. I'm in the end of semester wrap up on everything, and I think you guys know I teach another couple classes, so everything is like culminating at the same time. So I do try to check the email and get back to everybody, and you can always feel free to text me. Sometimes that's the easiest way to get hold of me, to get a good response. But if there's no other questions, no other comments on any of that, then we will jump in to the slides. So what we were looking at was the last few chapters, and 15, 16, and 17. 15 is from the employee's perspective. So we had two more slides on that. I'm not sure why I didn't do these last week, but we'll do these. Then we'll look at the manager, and then we'll look at the joint kind of thing. So, and some decision making. So from the employee perspective on Lean and Six Sigma, what you need to do and what you need to make sure that your organization is doing should you try to implement some of these concepts in the workspace. And that is to make sure that you take advantage of anything that's offered to you in terms of training, in terms of exposure, application, anything you can learn on this. This Lean and Six Sigma is not going away. It's pretty in demand right now. I have a couple of previous students who graduated and were looking for something to augment their degree, and they went and got a green belt certification, and that's been a big plus on their resumes. One student had a lot of trouble finding a job, but once she got the green belt, she found several different opportunities to at least interview with. So I think it's a good thing to consider. Just saying that you took a class and have any exposure at all, I think is a very positive message to a potential employer and to current employers. You can tell them, hey, I'm trying to, get some more knowledge of these things, because these concepts are alive and well. They're being implemented every day in companies across the world, and knowing about this is never going to be a bad thing for you. So I hope you continue down this journey. And if you haven't, do things like take a class, another class, a statistics class, maybe another class in this, and just help put these pieces together, whether or not you pursue a belt, which is not necessary by any stretch. But look at what's offered and how you can apply that. Applying this, and the beauty of lean, one of the reasons I really like teaching lean is it's not only a great thing to teach and to have in the workplace, but there are concepts that you can readily apply to your home. Now, if you saw my office today, which you will not, because I am not going to share that with you, it looks like a bomb went off in here, and there are papers everywhere. There's all of this kind of stuff. As I said, it's my end of semester, and it's also end of year. So typically I get my numbers together, as do a lot of people, looking, because I'm a business owner. So I looked at my business to say, where am I going to end the year? How do I want to do next year? And do some planning to get some things set up and make some renewals. How many of you guys do New Year's resolutions or set goals for 2024 for the next year? Anybody? Leonard, are you saying yes?
I kind of do. Somewhat, but I don't like pressure myself, but I somewhat plan on what I want to do in the next year.
Yeah, I don't like to pressure myself either. I mean, it'd be nice to say, oh, I want to win the lottery and I want to do this and I want to do that. But it's good to say there's a couple things you'd like to accomplish. And then think about, where you want to be. One of the things that works for me is to say, okay, if I'm sitting in a class next year at this time in December, how do I want that to be? What do I want that to feel like, look like? What do I want to say that I accomplished this year? And whether that's, taking a trip, which is a good thing to do. My husband and I love to travel, and we can, if I won the lottery, we'd be just taking trip after trip after trip. But we're not in that area where we can take every trip we want to take and all the luxury ones. So we have to say, where do we want to go? But we like to travel. We like to travel internationally as well as domestically. So we try to plan some of those things. My car is in need of replacement. So I would like at this time next year to be driving a car. That's not exactly a lean kind of thing, but just setting these goals helps you start to put together and say, okay, what do I need in order to achieve that? If I want to take a trip next summer, where do I want to go? How much is it going to cost? How do I need to do all that? And start to put the activities together. And when you start to map that out, that's part of the tools that we looked at, like with the SIPOC and the flow chart. How do I get from here to there? I don't just say, oh, poof, I'm on my way to Italy, or for example. I have to say, all right, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. So you start to get that organized and put together, and you get a plan in your head. So I think that's a very good thing to do. Resolutions are not a big thing of mine, but I do like to do planning. And many companies right now, because they are on their fiscal year is the same as the calendar year, they're putting goals together for the company for 2024. They're putting budgets together. They're saying, this is what we're going to do. This is how, this is where we want to be as a company. We want to do this in sales. We want to do this in operating expenses. We want to have this much profit. We want to expand into these markets, launch these products, do all of these things, hire people, maintain the workforce we have. Most companies don't like to sit around and plan and say, how can we get rid of a third of our people? That's not the kind of goal that you really want to have. You want to say, how do I hire 10% more and get more people in here and do more with those people? So in order to do that, the Lean and Six Sigma comes in to say, how do I do that? How do I get more efficient? How do I do more cross-training? How do I empower my workforce better so I can tap into their skills? And if you are working in an organization that is allowing you to do this, then that's great. And if you don't know if your organization allows you to do that, this is a good time to check that out and have a heart-to-heart with your manager, direct manager, and say, this is what I'd like to do in 2024, or, what are you thinking about? What's our team, our function, our department? Do we have goals for next year, and how can I contribute to those? So those are good things to do. um, believing in an idea or explanation. Sometimes you don't have to agree with it, but if you can just believe in it and think that, oh yeah, that might work, and give it a little bit of a crack of a hope of coming to fruition and producing something good for both you and the organization, that's a healthy attitude to have, and that's a good thing to do as an employee. And then all of us need to figure out how to tolerate difficult situations. Most of us sit in our bubble and think that we're the only one with problems or challenges and everybody else has it really easy. And that's really not true. Whoever the person is, even some of the people that we idolize and, people that are in the fandom world and people that, the Taylor Swifts, she still has challenges and she has things that she has to deal with in her life that are not always easy. So we all need to be able to work with those situations. And these tools, these Lean and Six Sigma tools, can help us do that, again, in the workplace and in our own personal lives. So we can streamline it and do things and get rid of the waste. So that's, we want to make sure that we are listening, that we're opening up dialogue and discussing things. That's a really important part, because we don't have to take everything at face value. We do want to be able to question and challenge. And that's the way we really get good ideas, and we hone those ideas when somebody says, what about this? And somebody else doesn't say, hey, that won't work. But okay, I'm not sure about that. Tell me more. Or maybe if we did that, we could also add this to it and we would get even a better result. Or how would we go about doing that? And somebody else has some ideas about how you can make that work or a way to go attack that goal. So it's really good to be listening, active participation, not jumping to conclusions, not trying to close everything out, making sure you understand what others are saying and what the message is, because even though we'd all like to be great orators, it doesn't work that way. And you can look at any video, any broadcaster on TV, any person who speaks in the public live, and they will make mistakes. They will not say everything perfectly. So don't expect that from yourself, but listen to see what the real message is. Unless you're an actor that's reciting a script, and I watched a little bit of Saturday Night Live over the weekend, and even them trying to recite a script, it doesn't always come out perfect, right? So when we talk, we are trying to convey a message. So as a listener, we want to try to really hear what the message is, what the core of that message is. So seek to understand that before you think about what your response is going to be or what the next topic is going to be. When you do respond, be thoughtful about that. Take a breath. Sometimes I say before you start talking and answering and doing things. The book talks about the Greek legacy of ethos, pathos, and logos, which is ethos is the values, the morals, the ideals, the ethics part of it. The pathos is the emotional connection, the empathy that we talk about, why people care and trying to make that connection. And logos is the rationale, the reason, the logical part of what we're doing and how we're going to get there. So you want to really blend all of those and make sure that those are in your response. It's important to hear people and let them know that you're trying to understand and that you think you've understood, but to clarify that and use those three: ethics, empathy, and logic to try to really connect. So I think that's the last slide in this. Nope, there's one more slide. So we want to connect those dots, make sure that there's tools like force field analysis that they talk about in the book, and you can look that up a little bit if you're interested in that. The book also talks about Newton's first and third laws. You can look at those too. I think those are interesting. That's not going to be on the exam, but I think those are good things to contemplate. Look at what's driving changes in your life. Are you driving them, or are you being driven by changes that others are trying to make or implement? What are the barriers to and the constraints to making the changes that you want to make in your workplace and again in your personal life? And if you're creating those barriers and constraints, maybe those are things you can remove and break down and try to address. So put the connections together, try to understand the drivers, and to not be just pushed all over, letting someone else make the decisions for you. I see that a lot in the workplace. Some workplace cultures really don't encourage people to stand up and have ideas and share those ideas. And for me personally, that is not a place I want to work. I like you, I went to school. I think I learned some things. I brought some skills to the jobs that I have and I had. And so I expect to have a seat at the table and be a participant in the discussion of how the work should go. Maybe not on the first day that I'm there because I'm learning a lot, but once you've been there a while and you have some competency in the area, in the job, in the products that you're making, then I think it's good to feel like you can speak up and bring your ideas to the table and at least be heard and considered for how you can make a contribution to what the company is trying to achieve. Because after all, that's what companies are trying to do. They're just trying to survive and thrive. Even nonprofit companies are trying to make money, right? They don't necessarily make a profit, but they make money so they can cover their expenses and have some just in case funds and be able to do things like upgrade computers or upgrade the workspace, do some different things. So if everybody's just breaking even, it's not going to last for very long. Even nonprofits, where they don't technically make profits, they do want to bring in more money than they send out in cash flow terms. So they talk about Kotter's model, which is, I think it's kind of a helpful model to establish the need for change. What is the driver again for the change? Why are we trying to implement a change? What's not working or what's not optimal that we can make a difference in? Engage all of the key stakeholders. Look at the vision and the plan and where you want to be. So you understand the situation and you say, this is not optimal, this is not acceptable, this is not good enough. So, all right, what is good enough? Where do we want to be? What is the goal for improvement? That DMAIC model is really powerful when you define, you measure, analyze, improve, and then control. And make sure you put the controls in and monitor that so that it sticks. Because if you don't, then too many times I've seen really good ideas, really good improvements in a workspace that aren't measured and aren't reinforced. And a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, you're back to where you were before you started this initiative. So I've got on here, here's the force field analysis that's right out of the book. This one talks about the HR system being implemented, and they've got positive forces on the left-hand side, negative forces on the right-hand side, and these are just working at odds. They're blocking each other. So the positive forces are pushing forward and the negative forces are pushing back, or at least trying to contain you where you are and not allow that forward motion. And we want to be looking at how we can move those positive forces and allow them to move forward and to really drive the change and get to where we want to be and need to be in many cases for our company to be successful and to be around a year from now. So, there's a lot of good tools there in the book and things that you can do. So that's from the employee perspective. Now we're going to take a look at the manager's perspective. So do you think the manager's perspective is significantly different from the employee's perspective?
In regards to the needs of the workplace, you mean?
And into making changes in the workplace, things
I
like implementing Lean and Six Sigma or other improvement initiatives.
I imagine it's not too much different, because even a manager has somebody, a higher system to work that they work in. So
Yeah, we're all answering to somebody, right? And
yeah,
managers. And managers aren't all knowing. They don't have information oftentimes that they're withholding on purpose just to torture you, which a lot of people feel like they do. Well, the manager, he or she must know this answer, and I don't know why they don't just tell me and help me get this done, because oftentimes they don't have the answers either. And a lot of the challenges and the um, problems that we have, issues in the workplace, are often complex. There's a number of those that are simple, and that anyone who's worked there for any amount of time and has any kind of level of competency can accomplish, can deal with, can resolve and move on. But the higher ones, the more complex, the broader issues are where we need a different approach than just Alexander, go, here's the problem, go solve it. I'm sure you're capable of solving lots of problems in the workplace, but there are a few that are either, and I hate to use this term, but out of your pay grade, or things you haven't encountered before, things that no one has encountered before. Think about 2 years ago or 3 years ago now, when we were still in the throes of the pandemic, and no one in our lifetimes had anything like this. So we're all kind of trying to take it one step at a time and work through it. So some you can learn from the past, you can learn from others that have gone through things, but sometimes you just have to feel your way through this and take one step at a time. And when you need the help, this is where this teamwork and this team approach really is a positive thing. So from the from the manager's perspective, they have not only responsibility for making decisions and resolving problems and implementing change, but they also have to manage the people that are going through this as well. And keep in mind that if you are not a manager and you're an employee and your company rolls out an initiative like Lean Six Sigma, then the manager is learning too. Unless the manager is the one that they hired as the expert and has all of this experience doing this, a lot of times the manager in the organization is a half a step ahead of his or her team, because they just got a little warning from their boss shortly beforehand that says, this is what we're going to go do. We may have been talking about this at staff meetings for the last 6 months and talked about it, but now we've got budget in, and as of January 1st, we're going to start this initiative and do these kinds of things. So as a manager, you're both learning on the job and trying to learn these tools and techniques and whatever the change is, and work through your own change curve on that, as well as coach your team through that, as well as report back to your manager and say, this is how this is going. I need more help. I need more time. It's going well. Everything's good. We can speed up, whatever the situation is. So when we talk about managing this, we're looking at managing the people that are going to execute these processes or update and change the processes and improve them. So if you're going to be a manager and you're going to advocate for change of any kind, it's really important that you walk the talk, and whatever your own doubts are, insecurities are, gaps in your knowledge, that is not something that you necessarily want to advertise to your team. It is perfectly acceptable for a manager to say, hey, this is new to me too. We're all learning this together. So you want to admit that you aren't the expert in areas where you're not, but you also don't want to say, I don't know, I have no idea what to do. Okay, let's figure this out together. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? So it's important to advocate for that change and to encourage people to embrace the change, explore options and ways to get through it, and those kinds of things. So sometimes it's a difficult position to be in, because as I say, you're working through the changes yourself on a personal level as well as a professional level. So if you if you don't know everything, that's okay, but you want to just make sure that you're guiding your team through that and continuing to walk the talk and be as positive as you can be. So I think we just welcomed, there we go, somebody and lost somebody else, but we're back. Okay, so managing the people is.
Oh, hi, yes, it's Ivana, just joining late.
Hi, Ivana. So get the teams working, recruit and assign the teams, work with them, make sure they're working together, make sure that they're making some progress, communicate up, down, and sideways. So communicate to your manager, communicate to your employees, and sideways, manager to manager. There's probably some peers that you have that are having some of the same issues that may be able to help you, or you may be able to help them, or you might be able just to get another head in your stakeholder circle to try to help and figure out what's going on. So follow the DMAIC process, do the appraisal, assess your progress, assess the team members. As a manager, your job is to remove the obstacles and the constraints and to try to get the team the resources they need to accomplish the goals. And so keep focused on that, as well as actually learning new things so that you can continue to coach your team as they become more proficient at the new techniques, policies, tools, whatever it is. Manage the process. So looking at performance, how are we going to measure performance? How are we going to assess that? When we want to get a baseline, and then we want to say, okay, here's where we started. Now, how far can we go? How good can we get? As a manager, it's your job to advocate for improvement, support, resources, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's another person, another skill set, a tool that you need, whatever it is, it's your job to advocate for the team to try to get the improvement, the change initiated and in place in the system, in the company, as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So it's important to look as the progress proceeds and see if you have challenges, errors, people stumbling around, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to do it, before they all just give up and throw in the towel and say, we told you this was a stupid idea to begin with, and it's not going to work, and we're never going to get this done. So think about, nip those things in the bud and make sure that you're working with the team. You guys all know what an escalation path is?
Like it goes through different levels of management up to ask either for approvals or help or money.
Yeah, exactly, Aggie. So know the escalation path for your organization and who's up and who's down and how that should go, so that you can let people know. But also when you're working with key stakeholders, know their escalation path too. So if you have somebody on your team that needs some help, needs some extra resources, isn't working as a teammate, then you might need to escalate that to their manager. Sometimes this is even with customers, and it occurs with suppliers when you're trying to put things in place. So if your company wants to adopt lean initiatives and a lean philosophy, it's a good thing to tell your key suppliers, hey, this is something that we're doing, and this is what we're expecting our suppliers, our critical key suppliers, to do as well, is to adopt some Lean and Six Sigma techniques. And we'll share some resources with you. We'll give you some information on where you can get additional training, knowledge, information on this as well. And then to make sure that you're overseeing them doing that, supporting that, and whatever. So you want to make sure that you're working, and you need to know their escalation path. So if you have trouble getting something implemented with a key supplier, that could be a real problem, and you might not be able to achieve your results as an outcome of that. And that's not what you want. So you don't let these things get to a boiling point before you say, okay, who's next in line? Who do I need to talk to? You want to know those escalation paths before anything happens that is negative. I changed jobs a couple of times in my career, and I came in as like the director. And so I'm getting to know my job. I know my job. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm getting to know the organization. I'm getting to know how to apply what I know to the organization that I just joined, meeting my staff, getting to know who's got skills, who doesn't. And I worked in operations and always a lot with suppliers. And there's nothing worse than the first conversation you have with a supplier that says, hi, I'm Jane, I'm the new director here, and we got a big problem. And you don't really know who you're talking to on the other end. You've been told to call this person, that they're the director of the company that's presented the problem, and you don't have a relationship. You don't have much of a foundation to do anything. And your choices are to try to, establish the relationship as you're working through the problem. I've seen people whose approach is to just start yelling and screaming and complaining about how messed up that company is, which is not usually a good first approach. Or to start by groveling and saying, hey, we're desperate. We need this so badly, which is not really my preferred place to start either. So, but it takes longer to get things done when you're trying to explore and trying to understand that escalation path. So it's good that you can establish those as quickly as possible and know who's who in that escalation hierarchy, as Aggie was talking about, so that you can move things along when you need to get extra resources from whatever. And then the quality standards that the organization has embraced, and quality, we talked about this, it encompasses a lot of different dimensions. It's more than just having the right, height of this bottle or the right diameter on this lid. It's really about how does this product look, feel, perform, conform to the specifications. How reliable is it? How durable is it? How all of these things are part of the quality assessment that the ultimate customer is doing when they buy and use products and decide, oh, that was a good one, I'm going to buy it again, or that thing sucked and I'm never going to give my money to that company again. So we want to be part of the former, right? So we're actually giving. So we're spending some time thinking about how is the customer judging our products and services, and what do we need to do to make sure that we're producing those and enforcing those standards of quality that emanate from that really keen understanding of the customer. Because that's, again, a focus of Lean and Six Sigma. It's really, what does the customer need and want? Being able to differentiate the needs and the wants and ensure that you continue to provide them with their needs at a minimum, and then to address as many of the wants that you can, that's going to really hook them in as a customer and keep them as a customer. So managers' roles are to understand, inform, communicate. It's a really important part of a manager's job to talk to their team and be aware of what's going on. And so part of understanding is talking and communicating, but part of communicating is also listening. How many of you have like regular, weekly, bi-weekly, even monthly kind of one-on-ones with your managers? Since you guys refuse to turn on your cameras, can you raise your hands or do something to let me know? Thanks, Aggie.
I generally like I kind of initiate it, and it's like I say, it's about that time. I put it on my own personal notebook and everything, because they're busy, and you could do that yourself too.
So you do this with your manager or you do this as a manager, Alexander?
Well, it's with the like the business owner, like the
Okay, that's the
the
manager.
practice owners, because they find it useful.
Yeah. Good managers should be making sure that you are on their calendar on a regular basis. Anybody else? Anybody not have that and think that that would be valuable, helpful, might improve performance of yourself as an individual, of the performance of the manager? Maybe sometimes that's important too, and or the team. Or did you?
I have it on both sides. I have meetings with my managers, usually on bi-weekly basis, to catch up on the project that I'm working on and to see where help is needed or what we need to reprioritize as some things, the minds change. And when I have people reporting to me, I from time to time have either interns or temporary employees. Then I make sure that they always can ask me any questions, but also that once a week I meet with them, or at least send them a chat message. Is everything okay? Do you need help with anything? This way, they don't feel like that they are abandoned by themselves. And if they need help or they got stuck and they were just too shy to ask about help, I can jump in and help them then.
That's good. That's a real balanced approach. That's important. Nanar, do you want to add? Can you unmute? Are you trying to add, I think? Well, while you unmute, I'm just going to follow up on what Aggie said and say that I think that's an important balance, because I've seen managers who say, I meet with my team every week and I have an hour on my schedule, and that is like very rigorous, but you don't always have an hour worth of things to talk about. And so, and sometimes it's like a interrogation session, and employees are very reluctant to actually do that. And if you don't get something out of meeting with your manager, then that's probably not a really good agenda and format to be using. So you might want to change it up as an employee. And if your employees, as a manager, if your employees are dodging you, then you need to go figure out why they're avoiding you too. Can you get on, Nanar? I think I can't unmute you either. Sometimes it will let me, but it's not letting me tonight. So
I'm sorry. It's just my Bluetooth is connecting to my car and my parents are like messing with it too. So I'm sorry.
no worries.
Yeah. I can hear you guys though. I'm sorry if you hear anything from my end.
Did you want to share a situation?
Me too.
I guess not. Anybody else have that where they either meet with their managers or don't meet with their managers, or you're a manager and you have trouble with employees? Because these roles are really important. So that in this book, we're talking about, we're referencing being able to implement Lean and Six Sigma, but these rules and these roles apply to way more than just Lean and Six Sigma. And I think it's important to talk about that, because if you can't implement, if you have problems implementing Lean and Six Sigma, then you're going to have problems implementing other things. Or if you have problems implementing other things, then your organization is not going to be very successful at implementing the Lean and Six Sigma. And so you can't just say, oh, all I'm going to focus on is the Lean and Six Sigma piece, because you're going to miss other opportunities. So it's important to do that. Again, your job as a manager is to teach, to coach, to reinforce, to remove the obstacles, and to walk the talk and really, be the model that you want your employees to see. That doesn't mean, and I always was very cognizant of that as a manager. That doesn't mean that sometimes I didn't go in my manager's office and shut the door and say, this is the dumbest thing I ever heard of, or what the heck are we trying to do? You really want us to do XYZ? And so I would work through it with my manager one-on-one, not letting my staff know anything. And when I left my manager's office, he or she and I were aligned, and I knew what I had to go convey to my team. So it's difficult sometimes to try to roll out initiatives and do things that you are not 100% behind yourself. But if that's your role as a manager, is to do that, as long as it's not illegal, unethical, or any of those kinds of things. But if it's Lean and Six Sigma and you're like, I don't really understand this, I don't know this stuff, how am I going to get my team to do this when I'm still learning? Well, take a breath, think about that, and how are you going to do that together as a team, and how are you going to emulate the behavior that you want your team, not emulate, you're going to display the behavior that you want your team to do, and saying, this is a good thing. We have enough information to know that this is a good high potential. Let's go see how we can make use of this and employ it in our workplace. So change is hard, and we talked a little bit about that. Change is something that we need to be driven through, not just, I'm checking the chat. So Marcus, thank you for sharing. Marcus says he has weekly meetings at his job, which is good. But we want to understand who the key stakeholders are, the subject matter experts again, and those key leaders. Sometimes the leaders in the organization may not be the manager in charge or the supervisor that's been appointed on that. Sometimes you have a supervisor, and yet you have a very strong leader as part of the team that you need to get on board as well. And as a manager, as a supervisor, you need to recognize that, because there are people in the workplace who are capable and have natural leadership qualities, tendencies, skills, but do not want leadership positions. I've worked with a number of people who have declined promotions to be a manager because they don't want the red tape, the headaches, the extra hours, the this, that, and the other that go with being a manager. And believe me, there's plenty of that. So it's not for everyone, and not everyone who is a good employee and a good, competent subject matter expert makes a good manager. But when you are a manager, you need to identify people that have these skills and leaderships and are recognized leaders in the organization, and bring them on board, because once they get on board, then they'll bring more people on board more quickly. So it's important to understand those dynamics. You want to be honest in communicating, be as frank and blunt as you can. I tend to sometimes be really blunt, and so I've tried to curb that and not be as just, but sometimes that's my way, and it comes out that way. I've always found that when you're honest, at least as honest as you can be, then that is the best path, because then you don't have to remember the things that you made up or the untruths that you're telling. And honest communication does not mean spill your guts to everybody about everything you know. So as a manager, many times I knew changes were going to result in other changes, but I still had to walk the team through those, and I didn't have to say everything that I knew to everyone on the team. At the moment, I knew it. So being honest is not necessarily 100% transparent. Transparency is good, and where you can be transparent and open, then that's a good thing. But sometimes as a manager, you have to hold things back, and you have to deliver messages incrementally. You don't say, okay, here's the end game, right? We're going to do this and this and this and here. So we need to make some changes. We're going to do this, and here's step one, and then here's step two, step three, and on down the line. So it's important to know your role, what you're trying to do, and again, what the goal is of the organization, and then what your contribution to that goal is in the role that you're in. So good team players, it's always important to do that. We teach kids, and if any of you are parents, I know some of you are, it's something that you want to teach your child from a very young age, is to play well with others, right? The old report cards that they used to give to young children, like in kindergarten and first grade. And if you got check marks, it wasn't a good thing. So if you got a check mark and plays well with others, that means that you weren't playing well with others and you weren't a nice kid on the playground, and that's not really where you wanted to be. And that's sure not where you want your kid to be, right? You want your child and your children to be good team members, even if they're not leaders, even if they're not the best on the team. They don't have to be the star of the team, but if you know how to be a good team member, that's a very good thing to have. Those are good skills to have. And so we teach them we start teaching them to children, and yet time after time I worked in places and I'm like, did you ever play on a team? Do you know what it's like to be part of that team, or do you just do everything yourself? And if you think you do everything yourself, I got news for you. You're probably wrong. There's very few people at work that I've met and worked with that are really capable of doing everything on their own. It usually takes more than one person, and usually several, even if they're not working for you or whatever, but they're people that you interface with to get things done and to be successful. And so managers, if you can have good teaching and coaching skills, that will serve you well. But again, those go back to communication and listening and understanding and all of those things. So we try to, as managers, and especially when you're doing Lean and Six Sigma, these are new ways of working. There are some tools that you need to understand. There, some math involved with the Six Sigma. There's some documentation that's required, taking readings on things, doing assessments, doing different things, and making sure that when you go through that DMAIC process, that you actually get to the improved stage, document what you find, project what your results are going to be, actually implement that. And then if you get the results that you're looking for, put the controls in place so that you can continue to get those results. So you want to document the performance process. You want to document the standards, the requirements, the benefits, how you're going to do this. Make sure all of that is captured and you don't lose that because somebody goes off and works in another area or leaves or retires or any number of things. You don't want to be people dependent. You want to be process dependent. If you've got good processes, then your workplace can handle people changing around, and it's good to get people cross-trained on things. If you have good documentation, it's easier to train, and it's easier for you to learn another person's job if there's good documentation there that you can refer to. So we're trying to realize benefits. All these companies today, even the big behemoths like General Motors and Apple and any large company today is trying to stay in business. They're trying to keep growing at a measured rate. They're trying to stay profitable, and they are trying to realize benefits from a lot of their activities, as well as accomplishing the work. If all they worry about is accomplishing one task, they're going to lose the context, and their business is not going to last for very long. And we see that through time. If you look at some companies that were very successful at one point, and yet have over time have eroded to the point where they're either going bankruptcy or being bought or something. So there's companies. The one that pops into my brain is Bed Bath & Beyond. That was a good company. You guys all know that company. You probably shopped there sometime in your life. For me, I think the first time I went there is when I was like going to college and I needed like sheets and towels and that kind of stuff from my dorm room. And there's been one almost every place I've lived, and I've lived in different parts of the country. And yet they are now, they filed for bankruptcy. I think they're being acquired by, I think it's overstock.com. But that was a company that was a vibrant company doing well. You guys all know Blackberries, right? You remember Blackberries? And BlackBerry did what? Because they were looking at what they did and not looking at what people wanted and how the world was changing. And so they weren't able to keep up. And now there's no BlackBerry phones available. There's plenty of other phones. There's Android phones. Even LG, who was a pretty good player in the market, now has pulled out of the cell phone market. They still make a lot of appliances. They make dishwashers and refrigerators and all of that kind of stuff, and a lot of different products. And they're a successful company, but they no longer make phones. They have removed themselves from that market because they found they couldn't. They didn't compete to the level where they wanted to. So there's a lot of different things that companies do. And you have to be aware of this. You have to be understanding of what your company is trying to do, what their goals are, how you contribute to that. So the benefits that you're trying to do through the activities you do, yeah, you're trying to do the basic job and get the things done, but you also have to look at, how do we do this better? How can we do more of this? What can we do differently to look around and see what's the world doing? And then how do we continue to be successful in the context of this changing world? And so one of the ways we do that is to track savings. And that's an important piece of any job, any corporation I worked with, even not even corporations, little small LLC companies need to track their savings. Okay, this is what we changed in order to save in this area. So now we should see a savings in this area. So maybe we've been able to not add a head, so we won't see that increase there. We were able to save some time over here. So now we freed up a person to go work in another area. So we should see some savings over here, and we're going to add to this area and make them more efficient. So you want to track the savings, whether it's time, whether it's dollars in material, dollars in labor, hours in labor, machine hours, maintenance of machines, space that you don't need or need more of, whatever unit of measure you use to measure the savings, you need to document that and make sure that you're realizing those for the company. And then again, Lean and Six Sigma are all about continuous improvement, right? So the Kaizen, we want to do these small projects, and a lot of those are very much very much a part of the company's success. And a lot of those are called today Kaizens. If you do an activity that says, okay, on Friday, we're going to shut the production line down and for the last half of the day, and we're going to get together and we're going to remap out and see if we can't improve that. We're going to see where we can take the waste out, right? So be thinking about that. If you work there with me, and Friday we're going to shut down a couple hours early, and then we're just going to see if we can't figure out better ways to do this. So we lose 4 hours of production, but we come up with some really good ideas. We implement those, and then we see if those give us the results that we want. If we do, then we institute those changes as our new process. And then we say, where else can we do this? If we did this on this production line, can we do that on another production line? Can we do something similar in another area that will help us get savings and we got that waste out? Or we identified this as waste. Where else do we have this waste in our processes, in our business? And can we take that out? So do we have redundancies in paperwork? Do we have too much paperwork? Paperwork is an area where most companies spend way too much time, make way too many errors and that kind of thing. So can we reduce that? Can we go paperless? And what does that take? Kaizens are, again, the short, really focused activities, but then you have full-on improvement projects that say, we're going to go buy this piece of equipment to bring it in here, and it's going to do these steps for us automatically. So we don't need people to do that. Where the people make mistakes, it's hard to do. It's a tiring job. It's a boring job. And people tend to make mistakes when they get tired and they get bored. So we're going to change that, and we're going to automate that And then we're going to make these people available to do different things. So you want to mix those projects up, not all big projects, not all small projects, because people get frustrated too when you have lots of big projects going on and nothing seems to get done. If you do all of the small projects, they don't tend to have the return on the investment that a big project does, like an automation product, but it does help them, the morale, it gets people involved, it gets people excited about what's going on, and it makes them more more readily able to and looking forward to changes when they've had a hand in making changes in their field of their space, the things they work on, the projects that they do every day. So that's a really good thing. So finally, we're going to look at it from the practitioner's perspective. Let's see, it's 8 o'clock. So I think we'll go ahead and why don't we take a break now? And I see Nikan, you joined us, so that's great. We have about 10 more slides, I think, and we'll finish those. And then I'll take questions on the study guide or any other questions that you have. And then, or your project, and then we'll call it a night for tonight and meet back here next week to wrap up the semester. So let me stop this.
Yeah, I apologize, man, for being late. There was a little accident that happened, so
No worries, no worries.
yeah.
It's
Thank you.
LA.